Hi there. Can't believe we're doing this, but hello. It's been a while. There's a thing about content creation that only if you're a content creator you understand this. But you want to make a video and then you keep talking about it, then you procrastinate, then you procrastinate, then you procrastinate. And before you know it, tomorrow becomes never, because you look at what's out there and the bar is so high at this point that you're just like, where do I fit in all of this noise? So I'm here. I'm going to just catch you up on life and tell you about my last year in Yeshiva. Actually, I know this is kind of like a 2023 recap, but I'll also kind of encapsulate different themes, different lessons that I've learned, hopefully relatable things that will be useful to you, and also just kind of see where I've been for the past, couple months or so. And I'm going to do this while eating lunch. So let me just quickly make a bracha. I am a religious Jew. If you're watching this and you're not Jewish, it's customary to say a blessing before you eat food and after, depending on the food. But this is to take the physical world and elevate it. We could just eat for eating's sake, or we can eat because we're grateful that, first of all, we have food in front of us, and secondly, we're grateful that now we have fuel for the next day, next couple of hours. Just give me a second. All right, and then in here, I'm in a place called the Yeshiva right now, and very lucky that we have a cook who cooks us food. You can't really see it from this angle, but she made us stroganoff today, potatoes and vegetables. So there's actually two different brachas here, so give me a second. Yummy. And all right. What have I been up to lately? I've been on this fascinating spiritual experience, far away from home, from everyone that I've known for about 2 years now. This has been something that I've always wanted to do for many years. This happens to be something that's been in my core since I was a very little kid. I got thrust into religious culture when I was young, but I had kind of it force-fed down my throat. So I had a really negative experience, but I always believed in God. I believed in a higher picture and a higher purpose, and that what you see in front of you is not just what there is. I have a fascination for truth and searching for it, and my life has been really, I guess, untypical. Losing my father when I was around 9 years old, and having to move every 2 years of my life and get exposed to different communities, constantly changing schools, and seeing different flavors of the world, lots of different people, and having to gain different social, abilities and whatnot. But back to Judaism. So I primarily came to Yeshiva. Well, there were a couple themes why I came to Yeshiva. One primary theme was because of this background of mine, because I came from an unstable background and also lots of divorce, not a lot of stability. I see, if you look at Orthodox Jewish culture, there's a lot less divorce. There's a lot more cohesive units in terms of family units. People are within community settings and people support each other, and it's a beautiful lifestyle. Now, what attracted me specifically to the institution I'm in is there's many different philosophical outlooks to how to practice Orthodox Judaism, and we call that hashkafa. But my yeshiva promotes being balanced, and that's very important to me. And by balanced, it means come in with a career and a life, and we don't want to change that about you. We just want to layer on Judaism and what Judaism is all about, and then go back into whatever you were doing before. And it's really beautiful because it promotes being in the context of civilization and not just kind of trying to live this sheltered lifestyle, and living in both worlds. And that really appealed to me. So I wanted to build this stable life that I never had. I'm looking right now, and it's January 1st. It's a 2-year program, and I have 6 more months in this program. I've been very existential, just thinking about, did I get what I was looking for? In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. Maybe it requires a reframe. Over my time in yeshiva, I've had to come face to face with some of my core weaknesses and figure out how to work on them and resolve them. One of them is that I've lacked patience, and it's manifested in a lot of different areas in my life. In one area, let's call it the dating sphere. A big part of this yeshiva environment is it's kind of funny because the culture here is that you don't date until around where I am now in the yeshiva process, where your second year during Hanukkah time, which is like December after your second year. And the reason for that is because your values are shifting and sliding, you're figuring yourself out, and you want to be able to go through this knowing yourself process without anyone else in the picture, without any competing opinions. And it's a really smart process if you think about it, because it allows you to kind of fall into yourself. Now, I started this entire yeshiva process where I was kind of like in a gray situation with someone else, and even though we weren't physically, we weren't together, I was still making a lot of decisions and trying to mold myself to be good for this other person. Now, the biggest blessing happened. We completely stopped talking. And after that moment, I was free to make whatever decisions I wanted for my life. And now I've been on a journey for the past year, pretty much all of 2023. I've been on this journey of figuring myself out. One of the things I noticed was I wanted to start moving forward in my life. I wanted to start dating. So I had, dating apps downloaded on my phone. And then one day I see someone, a fairly attractive girl, and she was very, very sweet, and she liked me. Actually, she didn't just like me, but on this app, she super liked me, which was like, okay, I'm very interested. Okay. So I like it. And then I end up going on a date with this person, and it goes well. And then after this date, the next day, someone else comes into the picture. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, I'm dating two girls at the same time. And that's a big no-no in the environment I'm in. You're supposed to go through the rabbis. You're supposed to do things in an official way. So I go and I talk to my rabbi, and he lays it on me. And I realize, what is the source of that? Impatience. And impatience has kind of been the downfall of me in the past in so many different ways. And I'm sure for you too, if there's something that you're trying to achieve or trying to get, or you see a world in a different way, and the reality that you want is not the reality that you have, that gap is painful, and impatience makes it even more painful. It's like pouring salt onto the wound, This past weekend, we were on our annual Sfat trip. So Sfat is it's one of the holier cities, and it's this beautiful city on a mountaintop. And I have a story about Sfat from several years ago for another time. But at the end of Shabbat, as we're packing up to leave, the rabbi, the rabbi that I've been building a relationship with, he tells me, take this table that we've been using. I have to give context. I have this tendency to do a lot of the things I do so I can get approval, so I can get attention. And what is it worth? It's all for nothing. It's kind of a twisted world to live in one where everyone else's opinion matters more than your own. And you have to modify your opinions in order to make people happy. You have some people taking moderate opinions. They're standing in the middle because they're too afraid to offend anyone. And they're getting shut down in the mist, and no one's listening to them because they're boring and they're not taking a stance. And you have people who are taking extreme stances because they want to be vulgar or they're attention-seeking, and they just want to have the most radical opinion so that they can just take over the attention. And it's an ego battle. But then you have someone who sits kind of right in the middle, who has their head spun on in a good way, but also has very strong opinions. And in order to be in that place of strong opinion, and firm, and teach it to people, you have to be willing to offend people. You have to be willing to speak your mind and not be loved. That's the hardest part. The hardest part about sharing your opinion, in my opinion, is that you have to be willing to be disliked. And for someone like me, and if you're like this, where one of your biggest needs is feeling important and feeling love and connection from other people, to say something that's not accepted by someone else is like death. It's like getting shot in the face. And being able to deal with that emotional pain and keep going because you know it's true and you know it's right and it's coming from your heart. To me, that's the journey I'm on right now, which is why I'm making this video, which is why I'm pushing myself to post this, even if it's a little bit disorganized, even if this first video doesn't make much sense, and even if I get 4 views and no one sits to the end. Because I think it's important to push yourself, even when you don't feel like it, if you know you're standing for something greater. And I was sitting down with my chavrusa, my learning partner here in Yeshiva, and I had a breakthrough. Because it's like customary in my culture, every Saturday, every Shabbat, when you're sitting around a table, to share some words about the weekly Torah Bible portion. That, we kind of go cyclical. Every single week we go through a chapter. And whatever the chapter is, we usually speak something about that chapter and relate it to the world or life or how it resonated with us. Or we'll bring an idea from someone from many years ago. And I love doing this, but I also hate doing this. It's one of my favorite things to do during the meal, and it's also one of my most feared things to do, public speaking. And it's because I'm sitting at a table with 15 people, and I need 15 people to be happy. I need all 15 of these guys at the table to find this impressive, life-changing, and resonate with them forever, or at least for the rest of the day. And it's not possible. It's just not possible to make that many people happy, and let alone you're standing in front of an audience and you're trying to make thousands of people happy. So my breakthrough with my learning partner was, you don't have to make everyone at the table happy, but focus on one. Focus on one person, because the odds are, more likely than not, that one person does need to hear what you have to say. It might not be 15 people, it might not be hundreds or thousands of people, but you can change one person's day. Would that be enough for you? I'm saying that to myself, and I think so. I think so. As long as what I'm doing matters. That's what matters. It doesn't have to matter. I don't have to be more important than other people in order to matter. I just have to matter in my own unique way. So I reframe myself to that. And now whenever I speak, even to this video, even to you, I'm thinking about making just one person happy. Because I know there's one person on the internet who's just chilling, and he feels alone right now. So he's going down the YouTube spiral, and he thinks he's the only one. So he's just sitting in his laptop in his bed by himself, in a room, or on his phone, in the bathroom, whatever it is, and no one understands me. And I'm suffering in pain and silence, and no one gets it. If anyone gets it more than anyone else I know, at least it's me. Moving around so much and never having that one place, that community, that friend group, never feeling truly connected to anyone else, no matter how many people you're surrounded by, no matter how many people think they know you, always feeling a little bit of aloneness. And I still feel it today. But I know, at least in this part of my journey, that I've learned that it's a mirage, it's a facade. People do love me. Sometimes I just don't feel it. The same thing for you. You might feel disconnected. You might feel like no one loves you and that you're not enough, but you are loved. People do love you. People do think you're special. You just don't recognize it right now. And I was in therapy last night, and pretty much made me cry when I was talking about a mistake I made. I ended up, one of my rabbis asked me to move a table. As we were leaving, we had moved a table in this hotel we were staying at, and I had to move the table back to its original location. It was made out of this marble-like material, and then I ended up, I asked my friend to pick it up and help me. He was busy playing with Rabbi's child, entertaining him. And then 60 seconds passed, and I asked him again, and still in his own world. So I get impatient once again. I pick up this table, and I didn't realize that the table, because it was so wet I couldn't see under the table, the base wasn't attached to the table. But I didn't see that, so I kept walking, and I'm like, why is the marble table going forward, but my legs are staying in the same place? It's because I was tripping. And I destabilized, fell, and it crashed into a bajillion pieces. And I started beating myself up, and I started being mean, and I was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. And at the core, it wasn't because my whole yeshiva saw me fall. It was because the person who I cared about his opinion saw me fall, my rabbi. And my therapist said something that was really crazy and thought-provoking to me. And he's like, you ever think that the reason you're so hard on yourself is because you feel alone? And you feel like you're going through life alone? My mom loves me dearly, and I love her. But she was very kind to me, and she didn't discipline me very often. So I felt like I needed to discipline myself, and I'd go through life and and that's when the perfectionism came then. I would just be harder and harder and harder on myself. You got a B, you got to get an A. You got an A, you got to get an A+. You can't afford to fail. And here I am trying to start a YouTube channel. Here I am trying to start a business. Here I am quitting my job and taking massive risks, spending thousands of dollars in precious time, having clearly defined goals at some points, but too afraid of going through the process to get there. I don't know if you can relate, but that's a fundamental flaw that I've been experiencing, is having these audacious goals and being ambitious, but as soon as the rubber hits the road, running out of gas very quickly. There was a telethon that my yeshiva put on a couple weeks ago, and as soon as I found out about the telethon, I was excited because my identity is someone who is passionate about sales. My identity is I'm a suave communicator. I know how to win people over. I'm really good at talking to people. I love talking to people. I'm sociable. Those are all things that I tell myself and I believe. And then I have this list of numbers to call. A little bit. I have that feeling in my chest, a pit in my chest. And I'm like, okay, so I'm already nervous. I call first number, I get a rejection. I call the second number, never call this number again. And the way that the rabbi set it up was, this was a group of like my whole yeshiva, and every time someone made even a penny, he would go in, he would give that person credit to kind of get everyone competitive and get everyone excited. And I'm hearing people get like $20, $500, $1,000. And then there's this one guy who comes from a very wealthy family and has a wealthy extended family. And every time he DMs someone on WhatsApp, $10,000, $5,000, $20,000. This guy alone probably raised around $45,000 to $50,000 himself. And I'm calling and calling and calling and getting rejected and people are telling me never to call again. At some point, I broke. I know you're waiting for the happy ending. You say I kept going, I had the grit. But no, I walked home and experienced that walk of shame, that painful moment of I'm not good enough. And it was really hard for me because when your identity, it's once again, there's that gap between who you think you are and where you're at, and being real with yourself and knowing that you might have the potential to be an excellent communicator, excellent at sales, excellent all these things. But there's no avoiding the work to get there. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, these big basketball players, they had to go through tons and tons of missed shots before they got their accuracy up and their skill level up in order to be the person that they became. It sounds inspiring, but there's no other easy way around it. You got to do the work. And that's the lesson I'm learning now. In business, in yeshiva, in my learning is a very challenging thing. If you're watching this and you come from a Jewish background, then no need to explain. But if you aren't, we learn Talmud, which is in an ancient language, Aramaic. It's no longer spoken. It has Hebrew letters, but the words are not in modern Hebrew. In order to learn it, and in order to learn the idioms and all of the different small language things, you have to learn it through tradition, through a tutor, through rabbis. There's dictionaries, but they're not really that helpful because there's a lot of contextual things that you really need someone else to teach you. That's why it's called the oral Torah. And it's this very, very massive work of text that could overwhelm even a genius if he's not approaching it with the right strategy. So I'm learning these skills of trusting the process. And I've learned that that's really the secret to succeeding. When you fall so in love with the process that you don't really care about the outcome anymore because you love the process so much. The outcome is like sprinkles. Let me give you an example. I decided I wanted to learn modern Hebrew. And I downloaded Duolingo. And I joined my friends in a family pack, whatever the family discount is. And I started doing it. And I used to do like 5 or 10 lessons in a day. But then they got kind of hard to fit into my schedule. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to do 1 lesson a day and keep going. Every day. 1 lesson a day, 1 lesson a day, 1 lesson a day, 1 lesson a day. I forgot about the goal. I didn't have a goal. I just said I'm going to do a lesson a day. That was my whole goal. And I'm at 245 days and counting as of today. Almost, I'm on my track for an entire year. And that's just a microcosm. I couldn't get myself to read a whole book in my whole life. And when the war broke out, this is another example. When the war broke out, I told myself, I'm going to read this Jewish book called Mesil Shisharim, which is a book on personal development for Judaism. And it's not the easiest read. This guy writes like on this level, and you have to kind of bring it down, but he does a good job of bringing it down, but it's still very intellectual and hard and dry. And I said, I'm going to commit to reading this book, and the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to do this in the merit of those who are in captivity right now in Gaza. And I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes. I'm serious, not 10, not 12, 5 minutes. And I don't care if I read 1 page, 5 pages, 10 pages. So I sat down for 5 minutes a day, and this was every single day, including Shabbat, every single day, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Some days I was completely asleep when I was doing it, but I said, I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes. And before you knew it, 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago at this point, it might even be a month, it was a while ago, I finished the whole book. I remember getting to the last page and being like, whoa, that's it? I completely detached from the outcome, and I committed to the goal. And I know I'm not the first person to innovate on this. Like, there's an entire book on it called Atomic Habits. And I even bought the Atomic Habits when it was trendy. But I never really built that idea into my life. It's really these micro routines that snowball in so many magnificent ways. With Duolingo for me, or reading a book, or whatever habit you want to commit to. And right now, after proving to myself enough times, I'm applying this principle to making videos. I don't care how edited my video is. I don't care what I put out. But I'm going to be posting weekly content. I'm not going to give you a specific upload schedule right now because I don't want to hold myself to it. But I will post videos every single week now. And that's a part of this journey of growth, of becoming a consistent person. I've been trying to embody being what I consider to be a man, a father, a husband. I want to embody that person so that I can be ready when I get married. And that's a big part of this, been a big part of this experience for me. Some of those qualities are consistency. A woman wants to know that you're going to be there every day. You're going to provide food for her on the table every day. Emotionally, you're going to be stable, right? Stability, consistency, leadership, decisiveness, being able to make decisions, being calm and collected, loving, vulnerable and sensitive, but not to the point where your wife is becoming your therapist. Now, this is a mistake I made in my previous relationship. I would vent, and my ex-girlfriend was incredibly emotionally intelligent and just so easy to talk to that I used and abused that quality of hers. And I would have a bad day, and I would unleash to the point where she was exhausted, and we were exhausted. Your wife's not your therapist, and that was a huge lesson I had to learn in my past relationship. And that's something that I'm trying to build. I'm trying to be like, how can I have emotions, be a man, and express myself and be vulnerable without unloading on the people I love? One of my rabbis actually gave me this advice, which is just like an investment, you want to diversify your friends. So you want to have a friend for emotional comfort, someone who's very sensitive and easy to talk to. You want to have a friend for playing tennis or basketball with. You want to have a friend for making jokes with. You want to have a friend to learn and be serious with. You want to have friends for different segments of your life. And you don't have to have a Swiss Army knife best friend. It's nice to have a best friend you can do everything with, but you don't need it. And that was a fatal mistake I made in my previous relationship. That person I was dating was everything to me. And you don't ever want anyone to be everything to you. That's very dangerous. You're putting all your eggs in one basket. So that's kind of, the journey I've been on. I've been on this, trying to pick one quality, one thing here and there, and try to be like, okay, this is the thing that I'm working on at this moment. Before it was consistency. Now I know I have consistency in me. Then it's, confidence, self-esteem. That's all very important, and it's a constant struggle. Right now, my biggest midah, or character trait in Hebrew, it's midah, which means measurement. I'll go into an explanation about that too. But what I'm working on right now is patience, slowing down, and taking time to really think through everything that I'm doing, and being okay with that gap that we talked about before. There's where you want to be, and there's where you are, and seeing this gap and being okay with that, and tapping into faith and hope and creating the right expectations in order to get there. And I think the key for me has been falling in love with the process and really just being okay with those micro habits and trusting that the micro habits will get you to that desired outcome. And I know that if I never stop posting, eventually one of my videos will get more than 5 views. And that's okay, because right now, that's not where I'm holding. But, we'll get there. And right now we're at January, and only have a few more months of this Yeshiva experience, and then I have to think about what's next. I'm at this pivot point where I quit my job a little over 3 years ago now. It's 2024, guys. I quit my job 3 years ago, and I have survived without a job for a very significant amount of time. But I've checked my bank accounts, and they're crying for help, and they need some love. So I'm at this pivot point of getting another job. And by the way, that's okay. How many people get to say they quit their job and they went on this adventure and they tried their best? I get to live with that what if gone. I did try, and I'm not done trying, by the way. Like I said, I'm still working on my dreams. But sometimes you got to dial down the risk if you're going to have a family, right? Because my values have changed from trying to be this massive, successful, multimillionaire, famous, all of this extra XYZ. It's all ego, and I just really want to be a family man. I want to have a strong income, and I would love to live a larger than life life. But if I had to live larger than life and be alone or going through a divorce or having struggling relationships because I don't have time for my kids, or I can be a father who's like more middle class, but I have the best possible relationships with my children, and they're incredible, and I love my wife, and we have a passionate relationship. This is way more valuable to me. Now, can you get both? Yes, 100%. Many people have done it. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, what matters more? One of my rabbis, Rabbi Orlowick, teaches what is wisdom, knowing what's important and what's more important. And it's recognizing that most things in life are going to take you for a spin, and they're both going to be important things. You're going to be at a decision matrix or decision point, and you're going to have to make a decision. Do I want to, continue entrepreneurship? Yes. But I know I've learned this thing about me, that the process is very difficult. Getting to that destination is very challenging. And I will work on that character trait flaw and work on that and get better. But until then, you got to be realistic. Having a job, having that something, under you, working with you, is a very helpful thing. And there's nothing embarrassing or bad about it. When you're on the internet as much as I've been, then people teach you that having a job is a bad thing, and I completely disagree. There's nothing irresponsible about knowing when your next check is coming in. And I say that, and I hear the guy from, I can't remember his name, Mr. Wonderful, saying your salary is the drug they give you to keep you from pursuing your dreams. And then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and poor people have jobs, rich people have assets, and you have to take these pieces of advice with a grain of salt, because they're toxic. And having a business is a really great way to make money, but you can also be massively successful inside of a business. Just working as an employee. If you're the best at what you do, you can climb up the chain. So I'm here just trying to learn how to take life and just appreciate it for what it is. Live life in the moment. And that's where I'm holding right now. And by the way, if I say that's where I'm holding, that's a Jewish term for that's what my current thought process is and where I am, my current status of being. I've been in Yeshiva for so long, there's a lot of nomenclature and then a lot of jargon that I have to, geschmack, is another word. Geschmack is wonderful. A lot of different words here. Anyways, that is all for this update. And I can't wait to see them get better and more consistent. And thank you for staying to the end if you are crazy enough to do so. See you in the next